Story 1. St. Louis Jane Doe, an 8 to 11-year-old girl, was found decapitated in an abandoned house in 1983. She had also been sexually assaulted. It is awful that this poor little girl has remained unnamed for so long and her killers have not been caught. This case has always haunted me. I hope she is identified someday and her killers are brought to justice. Story 2. Those yogurt shop murders in Austin, Texas, occurred some time ago. 4 teenage girls were murdered after closing the shop, and the case still has not been solved. Story 3. Asha Degree is the first case that comes to mind. She was a 9-year-old girl who seemingly had a nice and normal life. There was no bullying or abuse at home as far as the police could find. Then, one night in the middle of a rainstorm, she packed a backpack, walked out into the night, and was never seen again. A few people claimed they saw her walking on the highway, but when they approached her, she ran away. Her backpack was found buried in a barn. But to this day, a body has never been found. What affects me the most is hearing that her brother actually woke up that night and heard her moving around the room, but he assumed she was just going to the bathroom or getting a drink, so he went back to sleep. That must haunt him every day because he didn't check on her. Story 4. Rebecca Reusch. It is a German case. A girl went to her sister and her sister's husband's house and suddenly disappeared. The husband took a long, suspicious trip to a remote area early in the morning. However, the whole family is defending him. Story 5. Elizabeth Barraza murder. Targeted hit at garage sale. Cannot determine why she was targeted. The killer drove past again a few minutes after the attack, which was very risky. Someone wanted her dead. Story 6. There is a child from the area where I grew up who reportedly went missing for years. Then he appeared one day and said he had been at home with his mother the entire time. The police realized they had interacted with him over the years, but he had provided a false name. This was widely reported in Houston news for a while, then gradually lost attention. Story 7. Missing Timothy Pitson. In 2011, his mother checked him out of school in Illinois and took him to several places. She was later found dead in her hotel room by suicide. The child has not been found. Story 8. The Hinterkaifeck murders. In 1922, Germany, a family of 6 was found murdered on a remote farm. Prior to the murder, the family heard strange noises coming from the house attic. Story 9. Xavier de Lagon's famous French case. March 2011. He bought a rifle, silencer, and started going to the shooting range. April 6th to 10th. Neighbors noticed less activity from his family and contacted the police. During that time, he sent strange letters to some friends implying he might have been a United States secret agent, which was never confirmed. April 11th. He was seen leaving his house in northern France. April 14th to 15th. He was seen alive in a hotel in southern France. This was the last time he was ever seen. April 21st. Police discovered the bodies of his wife and 4 children buried under the backyard patio. It is estimated that he killed his wife and 3 youngest children on April 3rd to 4th. His oldest child was lured by his father to come back home from college on April 5th and was most likely killed that day. As of today, there is still no information on why he did it, whether he is still alive or where he might be. He probably committed the crime because he owed a lot of money to many of his friends and family and was completely broke. Story 10. 10 years ago, in my kid's bedroom, a box of books had been in the same spot for a long time. When I finally moved it, I found a large drawing of male genitalia on the carpet made with a permanent marker. No one knows who did it. The kids who were around 9 and 10 years old blamed the baby. Those kids are in college today and still won't admit to it. This incident has been bothering me for 10 years. Story 11. Andrew Gosden skipped school, took a train to London, was seen on CCTV leaving the train station, and then vanished. Story 12. My friend's case. His home was attacked with a Molotov cocktail, and he passed away a few days later. The police did not attempt to solve the case. Several friends who heard a gang threatening him days earlier were not interviewed. The killer remains free. Story 13. Brandon Swanson was a college student who got lost in the middle of the night between 2 small towns and disappeared while on the phone with his father. He was walking toward the city lights of the town he thought he was heading to. The last thing his father heard was, "Oh shit," and then silence. His body was never found, but some landowners in the area refused to allow police to search their property. It is believed he may have wandered onto private property and that someone disposed of him after he died. I hope he is found someday. It has been 17 years this past month. Story 14. Springfield 3. 3 women just go missing like that without a trace. Story 15. Greg Waddell of the Army was found alongside Vanessa Guillen. He was labeled a deserter, and that was it. I was in school with him from the very beginning to the end. He ended up joining the Army, and I joined the Marine Corps. I knew Greg. He was many things, but he was not a deserter, and even if he was murdered. I, along with his family, would like an explanation. Story 16. I don't know about haunting, but I think about it very often. What happened to Paul Giancantier's and David Rose's bodies? They went cave diving at Devil's Hole in Nevada, and despite numerous recovery missions, they have never been found. Recovery divers reported an extremely strong current near a crack at the bottom of the cave, and when they lowered the depth line, it never reached the bottom. They believe it is an underground ocean that sucks you in and drags you away to who knows where. They are fairly certain it at least connects Nevada and Mexico, since an earthquake in Mexico caused the water to slosh around at Devil's Hole. Terrifying. Story 17. I do not know the name of the incident, but the men who went to see a basketball game ended up miles away on a mountain. Some were found in the woods, and others were found wrapped in blankets, completely emaciated, in a cabin in the woods. Most of them starved to death or appeared extremely thin when their bodies were found, but there was an open locker full of food in the cabin. There are many more details, but it is disturbing to think about what caused this, not who was responsible. Story 18. The Lane Bryant murders in Tinley Park, Illinois, occurred in 2008. 5 people were killed and 1 was injured. The survivor assisted with a sketch, and there was audio of the killer, but the case has made no progress. Story 19. My friend's son was kidnapped by his grandparents and taken to somewhere in South Asia where there is no extradition. We have no idea what they are doing to him or how they are raising him. I miss that little boy. He is only a few months older than my eldest. Story 20. A woman from my hometown and high school went missing after she graduated from college. She had just gotten a job in Portland, and they found her car with her purse inside, but she had disappeared. I know this happens often, but this was someone I remember vividly. I even spent some time with her sister, so it felt much closer to home. Her name is Katie Eggleston, and she was from Redmond, Oregon. Story 21. It would be nice to know who killed my cousin. She was stabbed to death in 1983. Her father seemed satisfied that her killer was shot to death in a shootout with the police in the early 2000s, but we will probably never know. Story 22. Kieran Horman. His father used to come into the grocery store where I worked at the time. He was a quiet gentleman. He was never the same after Kieran disappeared. Story 23. The unsolved murder of Missy Beaver stands out to me because the killer was filmed walking inside the church, just relaxed and waiting for her. It has been several years, though. The killer could have died or moved to another country by now. Story 20. A 21-year-old college student emailed her professors about a fake family emergency, packed her car, and drove to a rural area in New Hampshire. She crashed her car on a quiet road. A witness spoke to her, called the police, and by the time they arrived minutes later, she was gone. No tracks, no signs of struggle. Just vanished. It has been 20 years. Still no trace. Still no answers. It is as if the earth swallowed her. Story 25. The Sodder children disappearance. It is an American case. The Sodder family home burned down in 1945 with 5 of their 10 children still inside. No bodies or bones of the children were found, and the children were never seen again. 23 years after the fire, the parents received an anonymous letter with a photo of one of the missing children as an adult, indicating that the children were still alive. It is still unclear what happened to the children who sent the letter to the parents and why. Story 26. Brian Schaefer. There were security cameras on all entry and exit points of the bar, and not a single one shows him leaving. Yet he disappeared without a trace and has not been seen or heard from in 20 years. Truly a baffling case. Story 27. A very close friend of mine met with a client one night and was later found brutally raped and murdered in a park. The people close to her and I tried very hard to help her leave sex work, but she just did not want to listen. I even offered to let her live with me, and every time she had a client lined up, I would pay her whatever her fee was to just not go. I could afford it at the time and was willing to do it if it meant keeping her safe. But she said she felt that would be taking advantage of me, and she insisted she was in no danger and that we were all overreacting. She was only 17 years old when she died. I had known her since elementary school, and we bonded because we were both badly abused physically and sexually as children. We found comfort in each other. I remember when we were in middle school, if either of our abusers showed signs they were going to come into our room later that night or after one of us had already been raped that night, we would message each other and then meet in a forest roughly halfway between our houses. We would sleep under a tree together to keep each other company, make sure we did not feel alone, and to keep warm. It was comforting because we never had to explain what we were feeling in those moments. We could, and sometimes did, but we inherently knew exactly what the other was feeling. We could just sit, often cuddled up with my arm over her and her head on my shoulder, in silence, and it made the world feel less lonely. Of course, with the nature of what she was to me, there was nothing I would not have done to save her. But the hard lesson I had to learn to accept was that she ultimately did not want saving. She was going to make her own choices either way, and there was nothing more I could do beyond what I already tried. More than once, I even got into fights with men who tried to hurt her. But this time, I was not able to step in, and she was killed. It hurts to think about what her last moments were like. She must have known this was it at some point and that this was how her life was going to end. Exactly how she was treated her whole life. Wherever you are, Lillian, I am sorry we could not protect you and were never able to get justice for you. I will never forget the impact you had on my life and my character as a human. You were the first person to believe I was capable of more than I believed in myself, and you were the one to put me on the path to becoming the better version of myself I am today. I truly hope you have found the peace you so very much deserved in life. Story 28. Lars Mittank was a German tourist who disappeared mysteriously in Bulgaria in 2014. More than 10 years later, there is not a single trace of him or any clue about what might have happened. I cannot imagine what his family and friends have gone through. Story 29. My friend Bob's death was said to be self-induced. Why was he in the back seat of a burning car if he killed himself? The fact is, he owed many dangerous people a large sum of money and was unable to repay it. There is nothing anyone can say to convince me that it was not a homicide. Story 30. St. Louis Jane Doe. The decapitated body of a young black girl was found in the basement of an abandoned building. Her head has never been recovered, so she has never been identified. Police errors resulted in the loss of key physical evidence, and DNA samples are no longer available for testing with current databases. I wish she could have her name back, but that seems unlikely without a head for reconstruction and no DNA samples to analyze. My personal theory is that she was either a trafficking victim or that her parents or guardians were involved in her murder. However, no one can say for certain. It is deeply upsetting that a young child died such a tragic death and has never been given a grave with her real name. Story 31. Michaela Bali disappeared from a small town in Saskatchewan, Canada. Video evidence and eyewitness accounts leading up to her vanishing suggest she was planning to run away with someone she was going to meet. She was never heard from again. Her actions that day were strange, and the town is a crossroads for the trucking industry. For some reason, this case stays with me. I pass a billboard with her picture every week, and as a father, it tears at my heart knowing what her family must be going through. Story 32. Morgan Nick went missing at a Little League baseball game, just feet away from her mother, who was in the bleachers. Story 33. Maybe not unsolved. But the fact that the lady and her dad from A Deadly American Marriage were allowed to appeal was unbelievable. Or Casey Anthony. Unreal. Story 34. Russell and Shirley Dermond. Two elderly people were brutally murdered, and the circumstances are unknown. Story 35. Disappearance of Ray Gricker. It happened just a county over from where I grew up, and people talked about it for a long time, so I remember it every once in a while. The only trace they ever found of him besides his car was his laptop in one part of the Susquehanna River, and its destroyed hard drive in another. He was district attorney for a long time and was about to retire from law at the end of the year that he vanished, so they did not think suicide was likely. Story 36. Diamond and Tianda Bradley were two missing girls from Chicago. They were never found. This occurred in 2001. I believe their mother's boyfriend was responsible. Story 37. The murder of 12-year-old Keith Bennett by the notorious Moors murderers. Not only did the sadists murder Keith and a number of other children, they refused to tell grieving parents where the bodies were buried because they could. Both murderers died and took the secret to the grave. Having been on that moor, I can only say that it is no place for the living, not just the dead. Story 38. The Tara Smith missing person case. I lived next door to them growing up. Her brother and I played regularly. They seemed like such a solid family. Everything pointed to her karate instructor coercing her into a relationship, then killing her after she threatened to go public. Story 39. Alexandra Wojcicki went for a walk in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan, Canada one night in 1962 and never came home. Her dead body was found in a shallow grave just blocks from her home 2 weeks later. Her case was hoped to be solved through a genealogical DNA search because no one mentioned that her next-door neighbor was a man named Sanford Clark, who was a complex figure himself. Story 40. A man in my town about 20 years ago was taking his children to school and got into a road rage incident. He got out of his car, and the other driver shot him dead in the street in broad daylight with his children in the car. Nobody knows who the shooter was. It always reminds me that people who behave badly on the road are not worth arguing with, and it is best to keep driving. Story 41. Johnny Gosch was a paperboy who disappeared while doing his route one morning in Des Moines, Iowa, at the age of 12. I was also a paperboy in Iowa at the same age. His mother claimed that years later, he visited her in the middle of the night. There is a theory that he was kidnapped by a child sex ring and that he is still alive today. Story 42. A neighbor murdered another neighbor and was never caught or charged. We all knew he did it. I found the body. If anyone thinks the police put their best and brightest in the homicide unit, I know of at least one instance where this was not the case. These officers were very incompetent. Story 43. The disappearance of Carrie Lawson. Her husband and the daughter of the man who is believed to be a kidnapper all went to high school and graduated in the same class. They were both popular and active in student government and clubs. They were part of the same friend circle. This happened in a small rural community in Alabama. Even though the daughter was estranged from her father and had no interaction with him, she was harassed and threatened because of her connection to him. The kidnapping occurred a couple of years before our first high school reunion. Out of a large graduating class in a small town where everyone knew each other and had been in school together since elementary, fewer than 30 people attended. I did not go either. I honestly do not know if there was a 20 or 25-year reunion. It tore the community apart and, as far as I know, remains unsolved. Story 44. Amy Lynn Bradley. I saw that on television when I was a child, and I know there are only so many things that could have happened to her, but it has stayed with me all this time. I remember when J.C. Dugard went missing too, and when she was found, it only made me more anxious to conclude these haunting disappearances from my childhood unsolved mysteries era. Story 45. There is a woman named Megan on TikTok who talks about her sister Sky, who went to Japan in 2008 without telling anyone and disappeared without a trace. Story 46. Almost every missing person case bothers me. It basically comes down to 3 possibilities. They legitimately got lost and probably died from exposure, they were murdered, or they were trafficked. A shocking number of people go missing every year. Story 47. The disappearance of Jodi Huisentruit. She was a newscaster from Iowa. Her body was never found. No one has ever been charged. Story 48. Someone defecated in the urinal at work. There is no toilet paper. There is a disturbed person at work, and this has been ongoing for 4 years. Story 49. Suzanne Martin from Pensacola, Florida, was found murdered over 25 years ago. She left a club and appeared to have gone with someone for consensual sex near the water, but things went horribly wrong. I knew her through my friends. She was close with them. She was a nice lady, pretty, sassy, and sweet. She left behind a teenage son. Story 50. My missing cousin left in the middle of the night 9 years ago. There has never been any evidence of a body or anyone seeing him since. He was a good kid. Story 51. Sherry McLaughlin, a girl I went to high school with, disappeared in 1993 when she was 20. She was riding her bike to visit her boyfriend at 1 a.m. and did not show up. Her bike was found damaged by the side of the road in a residential area on her projected route. There is a memorial plaque for her where the bike was found. I think of her every time I drive by it. Story 52. These are the types of posts that keep me coming back to Reddit. I just lost a couple of hours reading wild stories and loved every bit of it. Story 53. Dr. Gloves. This individual posted grotesque and depraved photos on an online forum of himself playing with and mutilating the remains of newborn infants and fetuses, and assaulting medically fragile children confirmed to have been taken at the Dignity Health Hospital campus in San Bernardino, California. It has been a decade, and there are still no leads on who this person is. The fact that he has been able to access hospital wards, morgues, embalming equipment, fetuses, and more without being caught or noticed is disturbing. Others have noted that he wears slacks and dress shoes under his scrubs in photos taken in the hospital, suggesting he may be a doctor. I hope they catch him soon. This situation is unacceptable. Story 54. Garrett Bardsley disappearance, circa 2004. He was a Boy Scout who disappeared in the Q-Brant Basin of the Uinta Mountain Range. His entire troop was nearby when he vanished after briefly returning to their campsite to change his shoes. Building on this tragic loss is the disappearance of other hikers in the Uinta Mountains. An Australian hiker went missing in 2011. People have coined the phrase the Uinta Triangle when referring to the disappearances of these hikers and campers collectively. There are many videos on this topic. Story 55. In 2006, my friend's sister went out for a walk without her purse or anything after an argument with her boyfriend. She was never heard from again. The police have never found anything. Because it was my friend's sister and there was hardly any crime in the area, it has stuck with me all these years. Brittany Stallman. I hope one day her parents find out what happened. Story 56. Maria Ridolph, age 7, was abducted in sight of her home in Sycamore, Illinois, in December 1957. Her body was found in the woods hundreds of miles away the following spring. The case was profiled as the oldest cold case ever solved in 2012 by cable news network, only to have the verdict overturned on appeal. The accused roughly fits the name, age, gender, race, hairstyle, teeth, and voice description from the only witness, who was an 8-year-old and saw him for only a few minutes in the dark. The accused is also a teenage pedophile who lived nearby. He was interviewed by the police after they received an anonymous tip but was released and remained at large for the next approximately 55 years. The circumstantial evidence is strong, but he has an alibi, although it has significant problems. His sisters, one of whom he sexually assaulted, swear he did it and claim that their mother confessed on her deathbed. However, there was no physical evidence after 50 years. I have studied this case many times and cannot say for certain. My intuition says he did it, but I may be influenced by the cable news network article, which is an excellent read, and the circumstantial evidence. His current wife and stepdaughter strongly defend him. Whether or not John Tessier is Johnny, I hope to one day see justice for Maria. Story 57. Evelyn Hartley. Just reading her case and how she was forcefully taken while babysitting a neighbor breaks my heart. I hope her family gets the justice they deserve while her immediate family is still alive. Story 58. Happened in my state, Brandon Swanson. In May of 2008, Brandon crashed his car into a ditch and called his parents on his cell phone. He believed he was in one area while his parents tried to find him but could not. After about 40 minutes, Brandon said, "Oh no!" and then radio silence. The phone was cut off. His parents reported him missing, and police found his car the next day in a completely different area than where he thought he was. Searches were conducted, but Brandon was never located. Several theories include him drowning in a river or simply running away. Story 59. Disappearance of Dorothy Arnold, Henryk Suwiak, murdered in New York City on September 11, 2001, and Dave Box. So many. I was a huge fan of unsolved mysteries when I was a kid and always carried some of those stories with me. The boy in the box got his identity. The murders of the 5 women in the Lane Bryant case and catching Esther Reed as a complete coincidence also blows my mind. Story 60. Crystal Rogers, but hopefully in a couple of weeks, her killer will be brought to justice at trial after 10 long years. I just wish he would tell her family where the body is. Story 61. What is at the bottom of the pit on Oak Island? It is not technically a case, but it remains a big unsolved mystery to this day. I still find it strange that after over 300 years and millions of dollars spent on expeditions and excavation, they have not been able to figure out or see what is at the bottom of the Oak Island pit. You would think they would have been able to at least get a camera down there by now. Story 62. Patty Atkins went missing when I was in middle school during the first week of July with her boyfriend. The boyfriend came back. She did not. The boyfriend claimed they were not a couple. Everyone knew they were together at her job, even though he was married. There was not enough evidence to charge the boyfriend. She left behind an 8-year-old daughter at the time. Story 63. Dyatlov Pass Incident. I love the mystery surrounding it. I believe there is an explanation, and Infographics has a breakdown of it on YouTube. A movie was made called Devil's Pass about a group of film students hiking to the site of the Dyatlov Pass incident, and what they discovered was connected to the Philadelphia experiment and time travel, which was cool. Story 64. Tanya Morell, Edmonton. Punky Gustafson, Edmonton. Dean Mortensen, Edmonton. British Columbia and Alberta Highway of Tears. Story 65. The Lauren Spirer Case. I was at Indiana University at the time, knew Lauren, and was friends with her boyfriend then, as well as good friends with several of his fraternity brothers and roommates. I still remember getting the call from my girlfriend asking if I had talked to my friend who lived with her boyfriend, and that her friends were looking for her. It most definitely was not her boyfriend. The anniversary of her disappearance was just a few days ago. Story 66. My mom might still be alive. People kept telling me it's impossible until I looked her up and found a video of her at some event. Now my brain feels like mush. 30 years of crying over you, but you turn up alive. I have been sending flowers to your gravesite. For what? For what? And if she is alive, where is my brother? Where is he? I demand answers. Story 67. Adam Campbell. This is a local case. On April 9, 2011, a car was found on fire in an alley at 3:30 a.m. When the flames were extinguished, the body of Adam Campbell was found inside. He was last seen leaving a local bar on foot about an hour earlier. He did not drive, and the car he was found in did not belong to him. Police have not released a cause of death to this day, and no suspects have been named. This case haunts me because it happened half a block from my house. I was home that night and saw the fire trucks and police cars. I worked third shift and kept the same hours even on my days off. I did not see or hear anything unusual that night. This is a small town with about 11,000 people in the city limits and about 15,000 if you include the surrounding unincorporated areas. This kind of incident does not happen here. Story 68. Sky Metawalla's case bothers me. His mother is obviously guilty, but because she never cooperated, they did not charge her. They said without her cooperation, there was nothing they could do without risking double jeopardy. It has been so long that she has been free without a care in the world. Lenoria Jones, Tika Lewis, and Summer Wells still haunt me. Foul play hurt those children, but nothing has been done. Story 69. The Black Dahlia. I don't know who she angered, but they did a number on her and no one has ever been found or charged. Story 70. Max Headroom's signal hijacking incident. Who, how, and why? Story 71. Brandon Lawson. This happened in my hometown, and I drive by his memorial on the highway all the time. They eventually found some of his partial remains recently, but they still have no idea what happened to him or why. The phone call he made to emergency services makes it even more disturbing. Story 72. Tara Calico is the reason I submitted my DNA for use with unsolved cases. She was 19 and murdered in Belen, New Mexico, United States. In 1988, my biological dad was working in an area where he could easily drive to Belen. My mom had just had my sister and was getting ready to divorce my dad. My mom was 17 and my dad was almost 20 when I was born, so mom was 19. I didn't think he did it, but growing up he would brag that he could easily kill a woman and get away with it. I really didn't consider that he might have killed her until many years later, when I was an adult with my own child and newly married. My brother's girlfriend had been sexually assaulted by my dad and broke up with my brother. We are best friends, and she asked me if I ever thought that my dad killed Tara. I was caught off guard and didn't know what to say. I asked her why she thought that, but I don't remember her response. If he did, it would have been completely random. That is why I submitted my DNA. Her case is still unsolved. Story 73. The Brabant killers in Belgium were terrorists who attacked supermarkets. The case is complex and intense if investigated thoroughly. The gendarmerie or stay-behind networks could be involved. Story 74. Alexis Patterson. Her stepfather walked her to school one morning in May 2002. But she did not get there. She was 7 years old. There was a lot of suspicion, but she has never been found. Story 75. Kieran Horman, 2010. I think he was 7. I never forgot it and still check from time to time. He looked so much like my son that a lady actually freaked out back then, demanding proof he was mine. Still breaks my heart. Story 76. Bob Crane, star of Hogan's Heroes, remains one of my favorite television shows. It is terrible that he was bludgeoned to death, and the case is unlikely to ever be solved. Story 77. The Tylenol poisoner reportedly placed poison-filled capsules into Tylenol bottles, resulting in several deaths. This incident forced stores to discard large quantities of Tylenol because it occurred before tamper-proof seals were in use. Therefore, no one could identify which bottles were tampered with. Story 78. A local case if you live in Vallejo, California. If you are from other parts of the Bay Area, you might know about it too, involving Pearl Pinson. She was kidnapped in 2016, and the police fatally shot her kidnapper. Because he was killed, we may never know what happened to Pearl. She could have been locked up in a room and, sadly, may have passed away. Or who knows, maybe she is still alive and was trafficked, and there is hope to find and save her one day. Realistically, we will probably never know. When I see the banner going into or out of Glen Cove, I always hope that one day some information will surface about her. Even if it is tragic news, at least her remains will be found so she can be put to rest and her family can receive some closure. Story 79. For me, it is the case of Lars Mittank. On June 30th, 2014, 28-year-old Lars traveled with 5 of his friends to Varna, Bulgaria. The group was on holiday at the Golden Sands, a popular seaside resort just outside the city of Varna. One of his friends said they primarily relaxed on the beach, played football, and went clubbing. Lars was reportedly relaxed and in a good mood. His friends reported no abnormal behavior by Mittank until the final part of the trip. On July 6, 2014, the day before they were supposed to return home, Lars and his friends were at a bar in town when Lars got into a disagreement with some other German nationals over football. Mittank, a fan of the football club SV Werder Bremen, had differences with fans of FC Bayern Munich. He then parted from his friends outside a restaurant after leaving the bar and disappeared for the rest of the night. Mittank turned up at the resort the following morning and told his friends he was beaten up by 4 men hired by the group at the bar with whom he disagreed the night before. The alleged fight resulted in Mittank suffering an injured jaw and a ruptured eardrum. He went to see a doctor who advised him not to fly if he was suffering an injury, as Lars claimed, and prescribed the antibiotic Cefprozil. Lars' friends wanted to stay with him, but he insisted he was fine on his own and told them to follow the original travel plan and fly home on July 7th, which they did. Lars checked out of the resort at the same time as his friends and checked into the Hotel Color Varna for one night. The hotel was cheap and close to the airport. However, a day after his friends left, he began to act paranoid. While at the hotel, Lars called his mother and told her that people were trying to kill or rob him and that she should cancel his credit cards. The cameras in the hotel recorded him pacing up and down the halls, looking out windows and hiding in an elevator. At 1 a.m., he left the hotel before returning about an hour later. It is not known what he did during that period. In the morning, he once again called his mother, telling her the people pursuing him were getting closer. Lars was last seen at Varna Airport on July 8, 2014, the day he hoped to fly home to Germany. He texted his mother that he had arrived at the airport. He went to consult with the airport doctor, who later described his behavior as nervous and erratic. According to the doctor, he told Lars that he was fine and could return home. However, Lars did not leave his office, expressing doubt about the medication he was taking. At that time, a construction worker entered the office. The airport was undergoing renovation. The doctor said Lars then began to tremble and yelled, "I don't want to die here. I have to get out of here." He then got up and fled the office. He left behind all of his luggage, including his wallet, mobile phone, and passport. He was captured by airport security cameras fleeing the terminal. Once outside, he can be seen on the footage jogging away from the airport, climbing a fence, running into a meadow, and sprinting off camera in the direction of an adjacent forest. Those are his last confirmed whereabouts. What do you think happened to Lars? Did he run away of his own accord, or was he really being chased by people out to get him? Story 80. Was Michael Jackson a pedophile? Michael Jackson was certainly an unusual individual and was involved in some questionable situations with children. What is the real story? Were the children actual victims? Were some children victims while others were pressured to fabricate stories? Is sleeping in bed with children simply sleeping? Story 81. I live in a college town in the Midwest. We had about 3 to 4 people go missing in a short period, maybe 15 to 20 years ago. They were all unrelated, but it was strange that there had been none before, then 4 high-profile cases within 2 years or so. All have been found except one. I will not say their name as it would reveal where I live. It is strange that they keep finding bodies nearby. They found one about a month ago when they broke ground on a new development, but it was not her. There is a significant amount of activity related to this case locally. The story includes everything. Parents who are understandably still very vocal about finding answers. A group of her friends whose stories are a little too perfectly aligned, and enough money in those families to ensure no one ever sees a courtroom. I genuinely wonder what happened that night to that poor girl. Story 82. I still want to know who sent that angry mob of former President Donald Trump supporters to storm the Capitol building and attempt to harm all of his political opponents right after the rally on January 6, 2021. Story 83. What happened to Heather Elvis? Where is she? That case has bothered me for years because it is from my hometown, and I just cannot wrap my head around it sometimes. Story 84. Because it is local to me, Leah Hickman was a college student who was reported missing and later found dead in the crawl space of her apartment. Story 85. The Las Cruces bowling alley massacre involved 7 people shot and 5 killed. The case remains unsolved. Story 86. Nicole Morin. If you have never heard of her, she is an 8-year-old in Toronto who got on an elevator on the penthouse floor of an apartment building and never got off. There is video of her walking towards the elevator, and somehow between her floor and the lobby, she went missing and was never found. Something about that just absolutely sticks with me. Story. At the time, I lived near where she went missing. I just do not understand why a 9-year-old girl would leave her house in the middle of the night in the rain. I traveled that road many times, and it is scary at night. Story 88. The Kremersfrun case involves 2 girls who went hiking in Panama and were never seen alive again. Only a few body parts and some unusual digital photographs were found. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.